So yesterday I decided to try sensory deprivation, and for those of you guys who don't know what that is, you're basically in a giant pod that kind of looks like a spaceship, and it's filled with like 10 inches of water and like 20 pillowcase-sized bags of magnesium salt. Now the salt makes the water more buoyant, and basically once you immerse yourself in the water, you can essentially float and experience weightlessness. Now the pod is closed. It's not locked for those of you who are claustrophobic, but you're pretty much naked, submersed in the water, alone with your thoughts in the dark. Really trippy experience, but one that I would definitely do again because I'm really into like meditation and just holistic types of therapy. The place I did it at was this place called Rest Nest down in Yorkville. Highly recommended. Very nice people. So anyway, I had this audition yesterday and it finished early. So after my audition, I decided to go to Rest Nest a little early, and by early, I mean 2 hours early. So I had a whole lot of time to kill. So I'm in the main lobby. I'm pretty much just reading, trying to kill time, and this dude suddenly walks in. And he just so happened to be the owner of Rest Nest. He introduced himself to me, and his name was Dan, and very nice guy. A very eccentric guy, but I do mean that in the most complimentary way. So, Dan proceeds to, talk to me about the sensory deprivation procedure, and he's informing me to keep an open mind because some people are often skeptical about the benefits. I didn't need any convincing. Like, I was already sold before I stepped foot in the place, so, I was good to go. But then me and Dan started talking about some really deep philosophical shit that just blew my mind. Now, due to my limited knowledge of physics and philosophy, I won't be able to do this story complete justice, but I really wanted to share it with you guys. So during my conversation with Dan, he asked me a very interesting question that I'd heard before in a movie, that movie being The Matrix. And the question was, do you believe in fate? To be honest, I had never really given that question much thought, even the first time I heard it, so I couldn't really base my opinion on it, so I simply just said, I don't know. And Dan looks at me for a moment and he's like, okay, it's a good honest answer. And then he hits me with this very interesting metaphor for life that I'd never heard before, but found really, really intriguing. So, metaphorically speaking, life, this world, or this universe, is like a computer. And within this computer, you have a program which relates to us, human life. And then you have your programmer, and depending on what your religious background is, this equates to God or, a higher being. Now, the programmer can input a certain variable to get a specific output. For example, 1 plus 1 to get an output of 2. However, the programmer already knows that the output is 2. In fact, he knows the output of every variable because he created the program. So I think the implication of this metaphor is that, even though we as humans have free will, no matter what we do or don't do, the output of that event is predetermined by our creator. Interesting concept, but it's also a shitty one because when you think about it, no matter what you do or don't do, your future is still always going to be set in stone. So, it almost begs the question as to what's the point of your life if you have absolutely no control over it? So I, of course, posed that question to Dan, and without hesitation, he continued to blow my mind. To my understanding, Dan believes in the philosophical theory of presentism, which basically suggests that the past and the future don't exist. Excusing the earlier metaphor for a second, the fact that the future hasn't yet happened means it doesn't exist. And in regards to the past, the fact that the past has essentially passed means it no longer exists. And, it's just a distant memory. All that exists is what's happening right now, not like 2 minutes ago when I was at the park. Like this moment right now is all that exists. I know, some pretty deep shit, right? The problem that a lot of people face, myself included, is that we're either too caught up in the past or too caught up in the future. Very rarely do people ever focus on what's happening right now. When it comes to life, everything around you is made up of energy. You yourself, you're made up of energy. The food you consume is made up of energy. In regards to the past, this is probably going to be a little bit hard to wrap your head around this, but let's just use a breakup for example. Energy can be consumed and it can also be depleted. So now, in saying that, I want you to remember this quote. Energy does not come in abundance, so you must utilize it wisely. I remember when my first serious relationship ended, and I remember when it happened on that day. In that moment, I was absolutely devastated, heartbroken, depressed, sad, whatever you want to call it. And, a breakup isn't something that you easily get over, and, it's common for you to dwell on it for quite a long time. During this time when, I was going through this breakup, I would do things like check her Facebook every 5 minutes and, drive by her house hoping to see her. She was constantly on my mind to the point where like I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Like that shit is real. Like it's not just in R&B songs. You may be thinking that, things like this are normal when going through a breakup. It's completely common to go through something like that. And you're absolutely right. Remember, we're talking about energy here. So what was I doing? I was focusing so much on the past that I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, focusing all my energy into something that no longer existed, that I was neglecting what was important in the present time. As a result, it started having a negative impact on my current life because I was shitty to be around, I lost a shitload of weight, and on top of that, I was sick all the time. If you're a health fanatic, then you're familiar with calories in versus calories out. Well, essentially in this scenario, my calories out were a lot higher than my calories in. While still using this analogy, you know that in order to gain, you have to be in a caloric surplus. Let's take a look at the other side of the spectrum and talk about the future for a second. This couple that, well, they're not a couple anymore. They used to date, and the girl in the relationship was always her man of cheating. I always assumed that he was out doing her dirty or some shit like that, and just always fixated on the potential possibility. Whether the guy gave the girl grounds to make all these wild assumptions is besides the point, but basically the guy reached his breaking point where he just couldn't take it anymore. He ended up dumping her. Now, why did this happen? The entire time, this dude was trying his best to make the relationship work and get them to focus on the now. Meanwhile, the girl, rather than utilizing that energy and focusing on the now, the present, she expended all of her energy into something that didn't even exist. In regards to the future, there's one question that I absolutely hate having to answer, and that's, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? This is a question that adds a lot of pressure to you because it's almost like you're expected to know or have your shit figured out. But it's like what I said earlier. Energy does not come in abundance, so you must utilize it wisely. For me, being a health coach, I have one client in particular who wants to lose 40 pounds. Now, him 40 pounds lighter, way out into the future, does not exist yet. He expends too much energy in the future, he's going to lose sight of what he needs to do in the present. Want to be a better person? What do you have to do right now? Not what it's going to look like 5 years from now, because truth be told, you may not even be here 5 years from now. I don't even want him putting too much energy into his future self right now and what that's going to look like, because if he does, he's almost destined to fail. I actually do believe that the past and the future don't exist. All that exists is right now. With that mentality, if you were to die tomorrow, but you spent every single day living in the moment, living in the now, you can at least say that you died driven and that you never ever wasted a day. Well, technically you can't say that because you'd be dead, but you know what I mean.